Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to another live stream. It's a big day for silver. As you can see, price of silver up almost 6% today. The spot price of silver now above $32 once again. Big rally following the Memorial Day holiday weekend. You can see here on the technical chart from TradingView that what has occurred here is we had a major breakout of silver Friday, May 17th, above the $30 level. That's a level in the silver price that has held for over a decade. Had a nice run up in very short order to over $32. Then we had a pullback, pretty normal, following a big breakout. You know, people take some profits. Then the $30 level, which was the long-term resistance, has become support officially. I think we can say that now, given the magnitude of the rally that we have witnessed today in silver, sending us back up over $32. Now, from a technical standpoint, if we zoom out, this is very bullish for the price of silver moving forward. We can zoom out. Actually, let's switch this to a weekly chart. And it really filters out a lot of the noise when you do that. But we've had this long-term consolidation in silver. Now, we called the breakout on that back in April, I think within about a week after we had called for a breakout there. We did actually witness it. Now, silver was off to the races. There was a little concern, I think, following that consolidation after the run up to 32. But look, I mean, now when you look at it on a weekly chart, that again just looks like noise, right? I mean, the breakout is intact. $30 is probably support now for the foreseeable future. Very unlikely we're going to go back below $32. Not financial advice or anything, you know, just my analysis of the scenario. And so, yeah, silver was really cheap when it was under 26 bucks. It was really cheap when it was under 30. Now, I mean, maybe it's slightly less cheap, but still, we should see the price heading to all-time highs, I would anticipate, in relatively short order. You know, you've got gold sitting just under its all-time highs, already had a major breakout there. Copper recently hit a all-time high. So it makes sense to me that silver will also be heading for all-time highs. We'll talk about some of the reasons as we go through today's live stream. Thank you, Jeff Tooley Tiger Thomas. Jeff Tooley Tiger Meerkat Dragon Thomas now, an amended name, a longtime supporter of the channel. I see in the chat there. Hello to everybody in the chat. Do me a favor, if you're watching this video, if you want to see more coverage of silver's big breakout, which appears to be, you know, well underway now. This is phase 2, where we're going to head up to the $40, $50 level, I believe. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. So if you want to get some silver before that big run up, I know, you know, a kilo of silver used to be under $1,000, but I still think that $1,070 or so for a kilo of silver is still cheap. It's just not dirt cheap like it was a few months ago. You can get that at SD Bullion, today's video sponsor. They've got a sale going on where you can get kilo bars of silver for 99 cents over the spot price, any quantity pricing, these Valcambi bars. So if you're in the market to get some cheap, low premium silver, that's where I would head. That's where I buy my gold and silver. So let's get into some of the factors that are driving silver here. Now, I mean, these are factors that we've been covering on this channel for some time. However, not a lot has changed. In fact, I mean, the stories we've been covering, they just continue to march along these trends. One of them is the expansion of the war in the Middle East and the risk of a broader regional conflict. So here's a headline from yesterday. The Times of Israel: Hezbollah fires dozens of rockets at north after fatal IDF attack in South Lebanon. Now, you might wonder, why does this matter? Well, if you recall, there was the weekend when we had Iran launching drone strikes and missile strikes at Israel. Everybody was afraid that this might blow up into a major regional war. Well, what happened over that weekend? There were gold-backed cryptocurrencies that spiked up to over $3,000, or right around $3,000. And clearly, the risk of an escalation in the Middle East will lead to higher commodity prices, lead to a rush into safe haven assets, and this conflict in the Middle East has not resolved. I mean, it is still well underway, and there remains a strong risk of a broader regional conflict, illustrated by this headline from Al Jazeera. Shooting between Egyptian and Israeli personnel near Rafah kills one Egyptian. So you had members of the Egyptian military and the Israeli military exchanging fire yesterday. Haven't seen too many details about what was behind this, but it looks like it was some kind of an extended gunfight, and at least one Egyptian was killed in that fire. So you can see that this conflict, again, is continuing to escalate, and global supply chains continue to be threatened. This is from 6 hours ago from Bloomberg. Greek-owned ships takes on water after being struck in the Red Sea. So a carrier sailing through the Red Sea today, according to maritime security firm Ambry, is listing taking on water, and that is the result of being targeted by 3 missiles around 54 miles southwest of the Yemeni city of Hodeidah. So Yemen's Houthis, they say, have not been named as the attackers, but the group has carried out a series of assaults on ships. Right, so the same threat persists. All the money that the U.S. has poured into securing the Red Sea and these routes seems to have been for naught. Of course, it will lead to high inflation and devaluation of the dollar. All of that deficit spending for defense, but it hasn't secured these supply chains. So global supply chains continuing to come under threat. And all of this escalation that we're witnessing over the past day or two, it's being reflected in the price of crude oil today as well, which was up over 3% today, back over $80. Rolf Steiner in the chat there saying the USA couldn't defeat the Houthis. Well, it looks that way. I mean, I don't think that there's the resolve really to go in there and do what would be necessary to end that threat. And so, supply chains are continuing to be disrupted, despite the fact that, again, we've poured millions and millions of dollars into airstrikes on Yemen, all of that for naught. It's almost as if, someone's making some money from these prolonged conflicts and they're, advocating for them with our leadership. But that's another conversation. This one from investing.com was interesting. It was from Kedia Advisory Commodities News, and I wanted to take a look at some of the things they said were contributing to silver's rally today, because there was no, big news that I saw. There was no super weak inflation print, no terrible economic data or anything that stimulated this. Part of it, I think, was the technicals. Really strong support at 30, and the bidding continues. But they say here that it is the launch of a new Chinese state-backed investment fund with a substantial registered capital, 344 billion yuan, aimed at boosting the semiconductor industry, which boosted sentiment for silver, which is widely used in electronics. Now, I didn't go digging for news regarding this specific fund. I mean, I don't know how important that's going to be for the price of silver in the long term, this one state-sponsored fund, but certainly Chinese economic development and economic recovery in China could be significant for silver because they're going to need a lot of silver for what they have planned. Now, you can see this reflected in the price of silver. This is pardon me, but this site is just not the most user-friendly here. This is the Shanghai Gold Exchange English version, so I don't think they've put too much thought into UI here. But you can see it's the Shanghai Silver Benchmark Price Chart, and so this is the price of silver on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. You can see that today, the benchmark AM price, so the morning price for silver, this is priced in renminbi or yuan, and it's per kilo, so we got to do a little math here, but it's 8,380 yuan, or renminbi, the Chinese currency, per kilogram of silver. Now, if we do the currency conversion, that's a price of around $1,156.62. So, hey, SD Bullion selling for under the Chinese spot price of silver, right? And if we do the math on that, we can see, again, a kilo is equal to 32.15 troy ounces. I mentioned this in a recent video, and someone tried to correct my math there. I think they were using avoirdupois ounces or something like that, if I'm even saying that word right. But we can do the math here. I've already done it. It gives you a troy ounce price of silver here. You can see on the calculator of almost $36, $35.97. So well above where we are today in the COMEX and in Western markets. Even the price of physical is below that, right? I mean, you can buy a kilogram bar of silver from SD Bullion for below the spot price on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. So if that's not an indication that you should be loading up on physical at these ridiculous prices, I don't know what is. But, let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. Now, why would China need a lot of silver moving forward? Well, I talked about this story in yesterday's video about commodities in the coming bull market. If you haven't checked that out, you can go see that after this live stream's over. But the gist of this is that China is installing a huge amount of solar capacity. Now, we know that solar means silver. You need silver to make photovoltaic panels, and the new type, the more efficient type of photovoltaic panels actually consume more silver than previous versions. For a long time, they've been talking about, the efficiencies are getting better. They're going to use less and less silver in these solar panels. Well, we covered it fairly recently on the channel. There was a study, I think it was from the University of New South Wales. You can look it up if you want, regarding silver's use in these new types of silver intensive solar panels. The new high efficiency solar panels, they use more silver than ever before. So think about this. In 2023, China installed 216.9 gigawatts of solar capacity. The United States, at the end of 2023, total solar capacity is 179 gigawatts. So last year alone, China installed more solar capacity than exists in the United States. I mean, clearly they're going to need a lot of silver to upgrade the capacity of their green or alternative infrastructure, whatever you want to call it. And of course, it's not just in China that this is occurring. As the AI boom takes place in Silicon Valley, the big tech companies, they're going to need a huge amount of power. Yeah, that is a lot of gigawatts, Marty. Scruffy Bart in the chat there. Anytime I see the word gigawatt, I think of the doc too. Don't worry. But look, they're going to need huge amounts of clean energy production. Now, you might have a feeling one way or the other about wind and solar and oil and petroleum and all these things, but the bottom line is that the big tech companies, and apparently China too, they want this carbon neutral energy, and that means that they're going to be investing a huge amount of resources into developing clean energy. So solar is going to be at the top of that list, and that means they're going to need a lot of silver. So, I mean, the fundamentals for silver here have been stacked in favor of a major rally for a long time. Last year, there was greater than a 100 million ounce deficit in the silver market, meaning industrial supply was consuming a lot more than was being produced from either mining and recycling. And as long as the price remains low, more production will not come online. So in order to incentivize the production that is needed for the infrastructure build out, which is right around the corner, they're going to need much higher silver prices in order for the miners to actually get in there. And those prices will need to be higher for a sustained period. And, therefore, I think that this rally, from a technical standpoint, we're there's not much resistance between here and $50, all-time high. And I think we're going to blow through that in short order. I mean, that is my forecast at this point. But the fundamentals support that as well. So there's a strong alignment between the fundamental picture and the technical picture at this point. And, all of this build out, it's going to need a lot of commodities. I wanted to look briefly at the price of copper. You can see the price of copper was up in a pretty significant way today as well. It had fallen from its all-time highs. Let me adjust the picture here so you can see the prices. All-time highs of just over $5 per pound. Now we're back up to $4.85, and I think copper probably headed to new all-time highs as well. I mean, we're going to see a rally in gold. We're going to see a rally in platinum, but the real thing is here that silver is just incredibly cheap still at today's levels. I mean, it was a lot cheaper, of course, at the beginning of the year. It's up like 30-something% now from January, but still, the fundamentals have not been fully priced in despite the rally that we've seen. I mean, silver is still very cheap, and I do believe we will be going much higher. I have not sold any physical metal. I don't intend to sell any until we get to much higher prices. Hard to give a price for that. I would say I would be looking at indicators like the gold to silver ratio rather than fiat dollar pricing to indicate when, it might be a good idea to lighten up on some of your silver. Maybe when the gold to silver ratio gets below, say, 50 or below 40, that certainly would be an indication that, the silver price might be doing some kind of an intermediate top or something like that. But we're nowhere near that. I mean, the gold to silver ratio, even though it's come down, still over 70 right now. And so silver, I think, is still the buy. Although silver is catching up to gold, and I believe it will be catching up, sooner rather than later. Probably, I think there's a real possibility that we could see silver breaking out to new all-time highs before year-end. Now, that might seem a bit aggressive, a bit of a optimistic forecast, but historically, when silver breaks above $30, it moves rapidly to the upside following that. And look, today we got the confirmation in the silver market that the $30 support has held. So, you can look at the charts, you can try to ascertain price targets. I think mid 40s is like a really conservative target for this leg of the breakout, but new all-time highs, they're coming. They are coming. On the copper front, I thought this was an interesting resource-related article that I saw today from Engineering and Technology regarding a study that was done at the University of Michigan, specifically about the demand for copper from electric vehicles. And the gist of this study was that copper simply cannot be mined quickly enough to keep up with current policies. Now, again, I know people are watching and saying, oh, electric vehicles is a scam, whatever. I'm not going to ever buy one. Okay, whatever. You don't have to buy one. Governments around the world are mandating the production of these, and they're trying to steer the economy in that direction. I mean, it's a boneheaded move, I agree. But, really, if you need electric vehicles, the free market will produce them, right? If they're somehow so much better than internal combustion vehicles, we would get them from the free market. But government policy is steering us towards these electric vehicles. And, it might be a foolhardy attempt, but it doesn't mean they're not going to do it. Cockpill says, buying now is stupid. I would disagree with that. Buying at 26, yes, was perhaps smarter than buying now. But I mean, I'm still buying. I'm still in the market. I'm buying the pullbacks. When you see a dip in the silver price on this run up, I think it will be a time to get in. I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, there might be people who are like sour grapes. They were dismissing silver. I know there were a lot of people who were dismissing silver back when it was much cheaper, saying, oh, no, it's never going to break out. Sure, gold's breaking out to new all-time highs, but silver's just an industrial metal now. They're probably singing a different tune now, but look, I mean, now is actually the best time to buy silver. We'll get back to this article in just a moment, but now really is the best time, I think, to buy silver because the breakout has occurred, right? So the run from now to all-time high prices, it's not like when you're stacking here in 2022 or in 2020 saying, higher prices are coming, higher prices are coming. No, higher prices are here and the breakout is here. And so, look, you might have missed out on this breakout thus far, but that doesn't mean that it's a stupid time to buy, right? I don't think that we're going to see silver crash down below $30. I mean, it's just my take. What do I know, right? I'm just some guy on YouTube. But if you've been following the channel, you know that we've been calling this breakout pretty accurately thus far in 2024. And so, I can't tell you what to do. It's not financial advice. I am going to continue stacking, especially when we get any pullbacks. I did a video last week when we got that pullback that was called Buy the Dip. And, that was a better time perhaps to buy than now. But again, there's no guarantee that we're going to get another dip. In fact, we've had the dip. The silver price dipped down to the breakout level. Now it's back up. So it's heading higher from here, I think. So, if the metal's heading higher, then that would mean now is a good time to buy. But this study from the University of Michigan, some interesting points here. So they say a normal Honda Accord needs about 40 pounds of copper. The same battery electric Honda Accord needs almost 200 pounds of copper. That is Adam Simon, a professor of Earth and Environmental Studies at the University of Michigan. And he says, we show in the paper that the amount of copper needed is essentially impossible for mining companies to produce. So if supply is constrained and, the boneheaded political elites creating this policy to, go more towards, quote unquote, green energy, persist with these policies, what does that mean? It means the price is going to go much higher. It means inflation is going to go much higher. The price of many, many things is going to go higher, but gold, silver, copper, platinum, these are going to be some of the best performing assets, I believe, of the coming commodity bull run. Oil too, petroleum, energy. Energy is going to be in very high demand moving forward because of the AI the AI revolution, the increased data consumption or increased energy consumption of these data centers, and all of these commodities are going to be needed for this high-tech industry boom that we're witnessing. And, of course, there's always this, right? If you think everything else is maybe a bit of a stretch, a little esoteric, you don't buy the argument that massive demand for scarce commodities is going to drive the price up. Don't forget that we're talking about the price in U.S. dollars. The dollar, now we've got, how many of them do we owe at the national level? $34.775 trillion and growing rapidly. The deficit, over $1 trillion, interest on the debt rising. We saw another thing we saw today, along with the price of silver rising, was treasury yields, right? 10-year treasury rising today as well in the green. Those continue to move higher. I think one thing you need to watch out for here moving forward is a huge breakout. Now, I want to talk about what could drive that soon. Now, this one is a bit of a stretch. Hold on. Wyatt Earp in the chat says, this happened every year. Yawn. You're not correct there, Wyatt Earp. It's funny to call you that, but look, silver hasn't broken above $30 since 2013. So we see sometimes these comments, I don't know, maybe they're a shilling for US dollars trying to, cast some shade on the precious metals, saying things like, oh, this is routine moves, this is normal stuff, this happens all the time. No, it doesn't. It does not happen all the time. In fact, the silver price hasn't broken above this level in over a decade. So to say it happens every year and it's just seasonality, no, I would disagree with that. In fact, if you watched my John Lee interview that was posted recently on the channel in 2 parts, he says that, seasonality-wise, this is actually a slow time for silver, so he thinks that may count against it. But I think that the other factors that we are witnessing play out here are going to be a lot more than enough to overcome silver's seasonality this time of year. The one thing to watch out for later this week that could prove of interest and could trigger a big run up in the price of silver. I mean, now that there's not much resistance any longer between now and all-time highs, we've got on Friday the PCE index and the core PCE index being reported. This is the Market Watch economic calendar. That's going to be important. One thing that we've seen happen with the precious metals with these inflation reports is if you get a weak inflation report, that means the price of gold and silver will move higher, because a lot of what is driving the price action right now is anticipation of what is coming next from the Federal Reserve. So if we do get a cool inflation print this Friday, and that's like the Fed's favorite, right? The core PCE index, that's what they like to look at. That could be the trigger to send gold and silver on their next stage of this major rally. Jeff Tully Tiger Thomas in the comments here asks, do you think the figures are correct on the gold to precious metals tab in the lower right? You're referring to the debt clock. I don't know. Let's take a look. I don't even know what this data is. Put it in the chat if you're familiar with this data. Okay, well, this is gold holding by country in ounces. These are the official numbers. Do I think these are accurate? Probably not. I don't know. Maybe the U.S. has all the gold ounces it reports. Hard to say. It hasn't been audited in a long time from what I understand. But certainly Russia and China, there is a lot of evidence that they hold much more gold than they are letting on. There are mechanisms by which they store gold outside of their official central bank reserves. We've covered this in the channel a while ago on some videos I did in the past when the whole de-dollarization thing really started to kick off. And yeah, it's very likely that they have more precious metals than they're letting on. I think most of the Western powers and the IMF probably report fairly accurately. I guess it's possible the U.S. doesn't have what it says it has, but I think probably more likely than not it does. I know there's a lot of conspiracy stuff out there about that, but nothing provable from my research. Although there's some questionable things there. Like it hasn't been audited again in some time, or the audits have been under some kind of suspect circumstances. Okay, Jeff says it is showing 19 million troy ounces of silver reserves, Where are those reserves? That's a great question. Precious metals reserves. I believe that those reserves that it is referring to are the reserves in the ground. Not 100% sure about that. Again, I haven't really looked at this tab. If anybody knows, leave it in the comments down below or put it in the chat if you're watching live. I believe what this is referencing, though, is reserves in the ground, because this is world precious metals production and then the production change in the reserves. So I think that's like proven reserves or probable reserves or something like that that the miners have in the ground. Hope that helps. But yeah, I mean, by and large, most of the data on the US debt clock is provided with citation. At least on the main page, you can mouse over stuff and it'll tell you where it's getting the data from. But yeah, I mean, this is probably US Geological Survey data or something like that. And with regards to silver reserves that are above ground, nobody really knows. I've seen a lot of different figures on that, like 2 billion ounces, 5 billion ounces. It won't really matter because we know that more silver is being consumed than is being produced. And when the flight to safe haven assets occurs, this is important. When the flight to physical metals takes place, it's not that all of this silver that's being held, by private investors and things like that is going to flood into the market. I mean, maybe if the price absolutely skyrockets, but typically with, a flight to safety and a speculative mania, what you're going to see is the higher the price goes, the more people want it, right? So regardless of how many of those reserves are out there, there's not enough to go around, right? You got 8 billion people on the planet right now. And there's not likely that many ounces. And a lot of those ounces are probably concentrated in a few places. And certainly, I wouldn't trust the data from the COMEX, from the LBMA, the LME. It's very likely that they overstate how much physical metal they actually have. I'm not really going to get into it today. I mean, we're already going on almost 30 minutes. But the important thing when silver breaks out is going to be how much silver you have in reserve, right? How many ounces of silver do you have stacked? Because that is going to give you a lot of options. I don't know how things will play out, right? I mean, it could be a sharp breakout up and then things move along normally just with higher prices. Maybe the prices will spike up in a huge bubble and then they'll come back down. Maybe the dollar will lose its status as the world reserve currency and dollar price will simply become unimportant. I mean, there's a lot of things that could play out here. But the good thing is that having physical metal, like a kilo bar of silver, the more of those you have stacked up, the more optionality you have when it comes to, how you can respond to any of the crises which are likely ahead. I mean, I don't know what's going to prick the bubble, the huge debt bubble, the huge fiat currency bubble that we're living through, but very likely it will get pricked. And when that happens, having some physical precious metals on hand will be a huge boon to those of us who are prepared. Leave me a comment down below to let me know if you agree with that. If you do agree with it, smash the like button. And, if you don't think you need to hold physical silver, smash that like button. Anyway, you've made it thus far to the end of the video. You must have enjoyed something about it. So please smash that like button. And anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Very exciting times. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the price of silver moving forward. But if you ask me, we are headed for higher prices, much higher prices, probably in very short order. And thanks, Jeff, for the channel memberships and for all the support and for everybody who supports this channel by sharing the videos, liking the videos. Tell your friends, help spread the information. They will likely thank you when the time comes. So anyway, that's it for today, everyone. Stay safe and happy stacking. I'll catch you next time. Smart